Good afternoon, and welcome to the 18th Annual Engineers Week event at the Pentagon. I am Tom Sims, the Acting Principal Deputy Director for the Office of System Engineering and Architecture from the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Research and Engineering. I am honored to be your MC for this year's event because we have a great lineup of speakers today. To begin, we will hear from the co-sponsoring agencies, the Washington Headquarters Services Facilities Services Directorate, and the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Research and Engineering. Then we will hear from our two featured speakers who will share with us their perspectives on the power of engineering to create the future. This event will be recorded, and for those joining us virtually, the closed caption option will be on for the duration of the event. Audience members will have an opportunity to ask questions to our speakers at the end of the program. For those joining us virtually, please submit any questions to the Engineers Week mailbox at whs.engineersweek@mail.mil. After our event concludes, we will work with our speakers to address the questions received via the inbox and post those answers on the Engineers Week website. Once again, that email is whs.engineersweek@mail.mil. To kick off the event, we will hear welcome remarks from Mr. Paul McMahon, Senior Advisor to the Washington Headquarters Services Director.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. It almost feels still like COVID. We're still there with a small audience, which we're happy to have here in person, joined by what I'm sure will be hundreds of folks watching this event on DoD TV network. We thank you for all attending. It's worked out great for us over the last 3 years and allows us to spread more about the good word about what engineers do for the nation, for the country, for our population. So again, thanks for participating. Facilities Services Directorate of the Washington Headquarters Service is excited to once again jointly host this annual program for Department of Defense employees, not just in the national capital region, but countrywide and perhaps worldwide, along with the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Research and Engineering. To start, I would like to thank the Facilities Services Directorate and Office of Undersecretary of Defense Research and Engineering teams that helped to organize, as in many years past, this year's event. Especially, we'd like to thank Dr. Sri Susarla and Facilities Services Directorate, who was key in pulling together all the support staff and arranging for the speakers to attend today. So thank you all. In addition, for those who are watching, if you have spoken in the past at one of these events, and we have had many years of Engineers Week activities here at the Pentagon, thanks for attending today, whether in person or online. Dr. Honey, the Undersecretary of Defense for Research and Engineering, was not able to attend today, but he has pre-recorded comments, which we'll see a little bit later on in his role as the Undersecretary of Defense for Research and Engineering and the Deputy Chief Technology Officer. I want to recognize today's featured speakers. Major General Richard Heitkamp, Deputy Chief of Engineers and Deputy Commanding General of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, who is very busy these days, as he's been telling me, with help in implementing infrastructure program work and the like, along with the traditional mission for the Corps of Engineers. And Dr. Dinesh Verma, Executive Director, Systems Engineering Research Center and the Acquisition Innovation Research Center. Gentlemen, thank you for participating today. To begin, let's take a moment to acknowledge the engineers in the room and watching the live stream. We would like to thank you for your hard work and dedication to engineering. Our work at the Department of Defense would not be possible without each and every one of you. Many Americans are unaware of what engineering entails or what engineers do. Every day, engineers pioneer innovations that improve the quality of our lives, from providing clean drinking water to developing technologically advanced defense systems. Each year, Discovery E honors engineering contributions such as these by hosting a nationwide Engineers Week event to celebrate engineering's importance as a profession. Discovery's 2023 Engineers Week theme, Creating the Future, underscores Engineers Week as a time to educate others and share our accomplishments, knowledge, experiences, and enthusiasm by recognizing how engineers inspire us to create the future and make a difference in the world, encouraging engineers to continue to innovate and dream up new ideas, increasing the public dialogue about the need for engineers, and inspiring the next generation to pursue a future in engineering. For the Facilities Services Directorate, engineers are an important part of a diverse workforce that provides property management, building operations, maintenance, construction and renovations, and other support services to a customer base of over 64,000 civilian and military personnel. Among our capabilities, Facilities Services Directorate manages engineering and design services in the fields of hydraulic, environmental, architectural, civil, structural, geotechnical, mechanical, electrical, controls, and computer engineering, and also construction engineering. Throughout the Pentagon reservation, our engineers are implementing projects that will create a safer, energy-efficient, and resilient future. Facility Services Directorate engineers have begun replacing all light fixtures in the Pentagon with new LED lighting with dimming capability. LEDs are more energy efficient than traditional fluorescent lights. They require less maintenance, and they save money in energy costs. This project is estimated to save 26,000 megawatt hours, equating to $2.1 million of annual energy savings. Facility Services Directorate engineers have also retrofitted all restrooms in the Pentagon with high-efficiency, low-flow water fixtures with an expected savings of 164 million gallons of water, equating to $1.4 million annually in water costs. Low-flow water fixtures are specifically designed to reduce water waste, which will not only save money, but also divert less water from our rivers, bays, and estuaries, resulting in healthy environments. As locations across the country are faced with water shortages and droughts, we can ensure the Pentagon is leading by example and doing our part to conserve resources. Lastly, our engineers are replacing chillers in the heating and refrigeration plant with high-efficiency chillers, which is estimated to save over $10 million in electricity costs over the next 10 years. Newer chiller units have more advanced compressors and feature automatic controls, allowing a significant reduction in energy expense. Replacing the chillers also provide us the opportunity to evaluate our existing cooling capacity and determine if there is a mismatch with the building load. When dealing with chillers and other HVAC systems, properly sized equipment offers superior performance. Not only do all these save money, adapt current technology, and improve resiliency, but they also improve our ability to support the Pentagon's mission as a command center for the Department of Defense. By using less energy on a daily basis, we improve our ability to provide mission-critical power to our customers within the current capacity. So overall, we are doing many things that save money, improve the environment, and improve the ability of the department to execute its mission. All these engineering efforts have contributed to that success in generating efficient operations for the military services, the Office of the Secretary of Defense, DoD agencies and components, and other agencies in the National Capital Region and beyond. We look forward to continued success in engineering projects and to future generations of engineers joining our efforts. Now we will hear from Dr. David Honey, who pre-recorded his welcome remarks on behalf of the Undersecretary of Defense for Research and Engineering. Please welcome Dr. Honey, the Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Research and Engineering, Deputy Chief Technology Officer. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. It's an honor to help celebrate Engineers Week 2023. I'm sorry I can't be there with you today, but we all have bosses, and unfortunately, mine needs me elsewhere today, which is typical of a day in the Pentagon. During my career, I have had the great opportunity to study a number of STEM disciplines and work as a scientist and engineer for almost a half century. And I've worked at Air Force Research Lab, in industry, at DARPA, and the DoD CTO's office. From all of those assignments, the one thing I can tell you is that there is no more exciting or challenging place to work than in the Department of Defense. DoD is one of the world's largest engineering organizations and employs more than 100,000 engineers. Here, engineers share a unique mission to advance cutting-edge engineering technology, systems and practices, and specializations that range from cyber and space to hypersonics and quantum science and more. Engineers design and deliver world-class products using leading-edge technology, providing today's engineers the capabilities they need to succeed is an important responsibility for my office. For example, where I work in the DoD Chief Technology Officers Organization, we created the DoD's Digital Engineering Strategy. This promotes the use of digital representations of systems and components to design and sustain national defense systems. In the past, to develop a system like a jet engine or a satellite or a fighter aircraft would take tens of thousands of paper drawings, blueprints, and diagrams to build. Today, in part, helped by this strategy, we're now creating digital technology to create digital models of the systems we engineer. Engineers can communicate important information about a system much faster and more comprehensively when using digital models. As an engineer at DoD, you can work on some of the most sophisticated and complex systems in the world, like the F-35 Lightning II, the U.S.'s first fifth-generation fighter. You can do this work using some of the most modern engineering modeling tools available. Digital engineering tools, computer-assisted tools, and more are all part of how we do engineering. The great thing about working in DoD is the ability to work across all of government. For example, did you know that DoD engineers provided critical materials for the James Webb Space Telescope? The DoD invested in equipment and facilities to ensure domestic availability of high-purity beryllium. The James Webb Space Telescope uses sophisticated beryllium mirrors that provide better performance in the harsh environment of outer space than traditional glass mirrors. Via the DoD's work, NASA was able to capture this image, which is a big slice of the observable universe. There are many paths to take and opportunities to explore to become an engineer in the DoD. I'll cover a few here today. First, I'd like to discuss the Science, Mathematics, and Research for Transformation, or SMART scholarship. This offers scholarships for undergraduate, master's, and doctoral students currently pursuing a degree in one of 21 key STEM disciplines. SMART scholars are selected, matched with a relevant DoD laboratory, and awarded a full tuition scholarship. Last year, we awarded scholarships to 482 students who will work for the department upon graduation. Each summer, they intern at that DoD lab, learning and building relationships. Upon graduation, they go to work at this installation for a period commensurate to their scholarship. 1 year of scholarship is 1 year of paid service. So, our SMART scholars get a paid education and a great engineering position right out of college, which is a pretty good deal. A second pathway is our relationships with academic institutions to create and operate the University-Affiliated Research Centers, or UARCs. UARCs are nonprofit research organizations, and each has a set of core competencies, areas of domain expertise or specialization that are tailored to the long-term needs of the department. Just last month, we were honored to help establish the department's 15th UARC. This new UARC is at Howard University, and it is our first UARC at a historically black college or university. The Air Force-sponsored UARC will focus on tactical autonomy, which will operate under a consortium model with a number of other HBCUs supporting this effort. Third, I'd like to tell you about the Vannevar Bush Faculty Fellowship. This is the Department of Defense's most prestigious single investigator award and supports basic research with the potential for transformative impact. Awarded as a 5-year fellowship with up to $3 million in funding, this fellowship supports the new, innovative ideas where researchers can intersect with the unknown. The fellowship class of 2022 includes 9 fellows working in critical defense technology areas such as semiconductor technology, artificial intelligence, and quantum mechanics. And for the final pathway, I'd like to talk to you about a place I worked for a number of years, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, or DARPA. DARPA is a research funding agency. It doesn't run its own labs. Rather, it funds companies, universities, and other organizations to conduct research in areas that are important to the DoD. DARPA program managers are entrusted with unparalleled freedom to create and execute new technical initiatives to meet the needs of our warfighters. DARPA program managers also serve as thought leaders among world-class researchers from academia, industry, and government. The selection criteria for a DARPA assignment is challenging, but it remains the leader in developing new technologies that change the world. In closing, I'd strongly encourage interested engineers to consider a career in the DoD. The need is great, and the work is very rewarding. The world is becoming a challenging place, and the DoD's need for sound, innovative engineering has never been greater. You'll not only do interesting and exciting engineering tasks, but you'll be part of something important, because the work we do truly matters. I'm very glad you're all here to celebrate Engineers Week, and I hope you enjoy it. Be sure to visit our Spotlight webpage at defense.gov to learn more. Enjoy Engineers Week, and I hope to see you one day helping us in DoD. Thank you.
Thank you. I am pleased to introduce our first featured speaker, Major General Richard Heitkamp. Major General Heitkamp serves as the Deputy Chief of Engineers and the Deputy Commanding General of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers in Washington, D.C. As such, he is second in command of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, which has more than 38,000 civilian employees and 800 military personnel who provide project management and construction support for 250 Army and Air Force installations and technical and construction expertise to more than 110 countries. As the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Deputy Commanding General, Major General Heitkamp is responsible for policy and programming and support of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers project management, construction support, and engineering missions executed around the world. He plays a critical role in contingency operations, supporting national defense, as well as civil works and emergency response programs in support of national security. Major General Heitkamp also advises the Chief of Engineers on real estate and engineering matters and programs related to the approximately 90,000 engineer soldiers within the regular Army, National Guard, and Reserve. Prior to this assignment, Major General Heitkamp served as the National Program Manager for the Southwest Border Infrastructure Program. He was responsible for developing strategy, planning, policy, and guidance for the $18 billion Southwest Border Infrastructure Program to secure our nation's borders. Coordinating this program with senior leaders of the Army, the Office of the Secretary of Defense, Custom and Border Patrol, and the Department of Homeland Security. He led project analysis and process improvements within the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers divisions and districts to effectively execute projects and associated actions. He is a graduate of the Command and General Staff College of the School of Advanced Military Studies, Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, and the U.S. Army War College, Carlisle Barracks, Pennsylvania. He holds degrees in civil engineering, environmental engineering, engineering management, military arts and sciences, and strategic studies. Now let's welcome Major General Richard Heitkamp.
Yeah, wow. Thanks, Tom. That was an overly generous introduction. You know, word to the wise, never let your mother write your bio, right? It's going to turn out the way she wants it. And Paul, I don't know what you're saying. I'm telling everybody that every seat is packed in here, right? So, yeah, it's fantastic to be here. And I'm trying this off an iPad today. So I feel, you know, my kids think I'm a dinosaur, right? So I'm over here trying to truly be an engineer. And it's not easy to be an engineer dad, right? Does anybody else get this? My kids don't think I'm cool. They don't think I'm progressive. You know, it wasn't until Elon Musk started landing rockets in the middle of the ocean or building electric cars that could accelerate at ludicrous speed that they got it all interested in engineering. They don't tell anybody I work at USACE. They call it USACI because they think it's closer to Versace, and that's cool. I'm not cool. So it's good to be among friends here here in the Pentagon, because this is pretty amazing for me as an engineer to be speaking at Engineer Week, right? To be a featured speaker at Engineer Week. This is big. There's a lot of college professors that would have guessed this was never going to happen, who would have advised me to take another line of work. So this is a big deal. This is like hitting a home run during the Super Bowl for a nerd like me. So I hope you're gonna let me suffer through this. And you know, another part of this is it's great that it's here at the Pentagon. Because as soon as I'm done, I'm going to go right across the hallway and tell all my buddies talking smack, right? Like, I don't know if you were ever a featured speaker in the Pentagon auditorium during Infantry Week, but no, there is no Infantry Week. Don't tell Millie that. He's not going to laugh at that joke at all. But it is good to be here. This building itself is a landmark to engineering. It's built by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. 16 months during a world war? 16 months? We can't pull permits in 16 months. That's amazing. So whether we're talking about the Pentagon, it's a great place for us to do this because our nation has historically associated engineers with its military. The first military school was the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. In fact, that was the only engineer school for a long time. And our nation looked to our military for its engineer expertise. And it wasn't until after the land grant program, after the Civil War, that states started developing engineering schools. It was always the military that was the go-to. So again, being in the Pentagon is the right place to have this discussion. You as military engineers are really a cornerstone of what we've done with this nation. Whether we're talking about the Pentagon or the Panama Canal or the Lincoln Memorial or the Washington Monument or the Everglades projects, environmental restoration in the Great Lakes, the nation consistently turns to the military to provide engineering expertise. And so it's an honor to be here on the stage sharing this profession with you. And I think that's one of the critical elements. It's certainly one that we try and instill in all of our young engineers. This is a profession. And you must feel that way as well, because this isn't a job to you, or you wouldn't be sitting here or dialing in. This is a profession. You have been called, a higher calling, to combine technology and science and develop amazing outcomes. That's more than a job. And I'm happy to be here sharing this profession with you. When I was in college, back when dinosaurs did roam the earth, right, I worked for the dean of our engineering school for a while. And as you can imagine, he was a little passionate about the role of engineers and engineer education. Amazing man, part of the greatest generation, flew bombers in World War II, Dr. Buckley. And so one day I made the mistake of telling Dr. Buckley, after graduation, I think I'm going to go to law school. I think it'd be great to combine those two fields, civil engineering, the law, be a technical attorney, and he blew his mind. I don't think he realized that we had actually signed the peace agreement with Japan, because he said, "Hi, Cap, the Japanese are eating our lunch. This is why they're getting ahead. They've got 20 engineers for every lawyer. We got less than 3 engineers for every lawyer." And so needless to say, I did not get to go to law school. And ended up going, he said, "What we really need is water security. That's what our world needs, is water security. You're going to school for water treatment, and you're not going to start filing lawsuits." And although it's over 30 years since we had that conversation, it's as true today as it was then. We need engineers more than ever. I know we need them in the Corps of Engineers. As Paul mentioned, we were just commissioned by the administration to fix the nation's infrastructure, to repair, replace, improve infrastructure that has been aging for a long time. And so the administration made this huge investment, almost $100 billion, to start this work. And this is like the worst day at Ranger School. What are you going to do now, Ranger? Right? You got the money you asked for. Now you need to put these projects in the ground. Now you need to make this steel and concrete appear and improve what we have for the American people, not for today, but for the next 100 years. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, but it's a huge challenge. So our biggest opportunity is also our biggest challenge. But to make that worse, if that was possible, we have to do it during a time of climate change. So we have an existential threat with climate change. And we can't just go into the old tool bag and use the old solutions that worked before. But my boss calls it new old. So you might get it new, but it's old technology, it's old thinking. He said, we can't do new old. We need new. We need new solutions for these problems. New, got it, yeah, new. Well, that briefs well, right? That's really hard to do. So we've done things like really ramping up our R&D investments. But it's also mentally getting people to think about change. And so, I think General Shinseki said it best. Anybody old enough here to be in the blue bedroom at CGSC at Leavenworth? I know there's some online. there I was as a major, sitting listening to General Shinseki, and he was talking about transformation. And really his whole point was, you have to be a transformational leader. You have to be able to be flexible and agile. And he said, you know, I know a lot of you don't like change, but you're going to like being irrelevant a whole lot less. And it's always stuck with me because those are well-put words for the mission that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has. And we're driving change every day. I'm going to give you 3 quick examples. One of our most promising projects is called Engineering with Nature. So instead of building higher seawalls or more concrete and steel, this is using the natural engineering processes to ensure that we have better security with environmental, economic, and social benefits. We're also doing something with smart buildings. So we're incorporating passive technology into our smart buildings, all of our new construction, to try and reduce the amount of fossil fuels that are consumed in those facilities. So much like Paul was describing, a few small changes can really make amazing returns. And then the last one is, it's for those of you who know dredging, that's basically lowering harbors and rivers and ports so that it can support larger ships. Well, there's not much older technology than dredging, right? We've been doing that since the 1800s. So don't tell me this is new. But we're using artificial intelligence to help us optimize that dredging. Which is really amazing because it's allowing us to maximize commerce to such a better level, places that we weren't able to operate in before. So how we deliver this within the Corps of Engineers are multiple discipline teams, delivery teams coming from a whole host of backgrounds. And you know, it seems like our boundaries are blurring. So when we graduated engineering school, you worked either in mechanical engineering or electrical engineering or civil engineering. Those boundaries were very, very distinct. Not anymore, they're blurred. And it's not enough to be a good engineer. It's not enough to be a good technical expert. We also need you to use the other side of your brain. I need you to be able to lead and motivate teams. I need you to get them excited to work together. You know, there's nothing worse than a whole room full of introverted engineers, right? Trying to get them to talk and work and collaborate together. Oh, yeah, that's what we need our engineers to do. And so, you know, we try to incorporate that in how we develop our engineers. But that's really tough. How do you encourage creativity? How do you teach creativity? How do you teach engineers to tell a good story? Right, did I lose you? You're probably like, why do I need to tell a good story? Well, do you like funding? Because that's how you're going to get it. This great idea you've got, this new innovation, you're going to have to tell a compelling story for somebody to believe in you and take a chance on this new idea. And given the price tag of some of our projects, that had better be a fascinating story, right? So we need engineers who think differently than we did when we were going through school. But that's what we're growing every day at the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. We are inspiring our engineers to do more, to aspire to greatness. And we have a big tent, right? You don't have to be a licensed engineer to have a role in what we're doing. You know, in Disney, they call them Imagineers. That's the members of their teams. Well, in USACE, we have Solutioneers. And they come from every walk of life, every background, every degree, every discipline. And you would be amazed what that diversity of thought can produce when they all work together. I mean, one of my best Solutioneers majored in hospitality management. And this woman can do anything. She's amazing. She's one of our best program managers. So I don't look down my nose just because you didn't go to an ABET accredited program. There is plenty of room in the circle of love for everybody to help. And we're bringing them all into USACE. But don't take it from me. I want you to take it from the men and women who actually work there. So go ahead and roll the tape, please.
One of the things that I really enjoy about working here at the Corps of Engineers is that we work at just an incredible scale. You know, usually the problems that we get asked to solve are problems that either the local or the state government couldn't solve or didn't have the finances to solve. And so we get engaged because these issues, these concerns are at a national scale, or they're at just a massive scale.
Depending on what you do, the Corps will have something for you to do. The mission is always evolving. There's always new things, great innovation, great people to work for. The leadership for myself, I've had a great experience in all the missions I've been on: Puerto Rico, Afghanistan, Iraq, and as well as here in Kuwait. So I don't think you would ever make a bad choice by choosing the Corps of Engineers.
And one of the reasons I started working for the Corps was I saw that they had a very detailed and systematic way of how they managed to control the quality of the projects that we deliver.
We do so many different things that, I've learned to do things I've never done before. Like I said, just from, job to job, it's always different.
Even though I've only been with USACE for a little over 2 years, I've been a government employee for over 20. And of all the different agencies I've worked for, this is the place that feels like home, and this has been the place that I've loved the most.
Lots of potential and opportunity, lots of upward mobility, promotional opportunities. I think USACE offers outside of the box type of scenarios.
So if you want to travel and see a lot of things, and you want to do a lot of things that are challenging and exciting, but you don't want to have to join the military in order to do so, this is the organization to be in.
Don't be afraid of the title. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, there's no requirement to enlist, and you don't have to be an engineer.
And it really resonated with me, USACE's mission to provide and to protect for our country and our environment. And I believe what USACE does for our wetlands and all of the waters of the United States is invaluable, and I just really wanted to be a part of that team.
Well, I think the number one aspect working with USACE is working in teams. We have such strong teams that have deep technical competencies. We also are a global organization, and so we have teams that are from all walks of life.
I like working with the people. I like the challenge of the projects, and I like the camaraderie that is part of an organization that helps to serve the people of the United States and federal government. It's something I'm very proud of, and I love coming to work every day just because of it.
Corps of Engineers is structured with an overall different diversity of all professionals, and it's a very professional place to work.
It has to be the people. We have an amazingly good group of people working here in the Corps. You find they show up with every kind of background, every kind of experience base, every kind of academic credentials.
If you're interested in practical work and engaging stakeholders and working, getting your hands real dirty with big problems that matter to the nation, come to the Corps.
If you're a young engineer looking for a career, I would highly recommend the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. If you're looking to advance your career, please look to us. We have a variety of engineering disciplines and positions within the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers that help you take your career to new heights.
I really enjoy what we do for the local communities and for the public, as well as for the military.
It's the best experience you could imagine throughout a career. You can go anywhere in the world pretty much you can do any job that you want without ever having to change the organization you're with, and most importantly, your retirement plan.
I love the people I work with. The work culture here is very respectful, and everyone I work with is great at what they do. And most importantly, as a computer scientist, this is very important to me. Everyone here is always looking for the most innovative technological solutions, which makes my job very rewarding.
I love everything, but the sheer amount and variety of opportunities that I get, USACE has allowed me to travel the world.
What I enjoy most about my job is a variety of different work that we get to do on a daily basis.
The organization is going to offer you incredible benefits, and it's also going to offer you incredible opportunities to give back.
Well, I do sincerely mean it when I say that it's an honor to have done this in Engineering Day, Engineer Week. So thank you for the invitation. And thank you for accepting this calling to be a member of this coalition of the willing. We need you for the future. Army strong, building strong, SAONs. Thank you.
Okay, please join me in thanking Major General Richard Heitkamp for his presentation and contributions to the engineering community. As a reminder, we will take questions from the audience at the end of the next presentation, or you can always email questions to Major General Heitkamp to whs.engineersweek@mail.mil. Next, we will hear from Dr. Dinesh Verma, Executive Director, System Engineering Research Center and Acquisition Innovation Research Center. Dr. Dinesh Verma served as the founding dean to the School of Systems and Enterprises at the Stevens Institute of Technology from 2007 to 2016. He currently serves as the executive director to the Systems Engineering Research Center, which is a U.S. Department of Defense-sponsored, university-affiliated research center that is focused on system engineering research, along with the Acquisition Innovation Research Center. During his 20 years at Stevens Institute of Technology, he successfully proposed research and academic programs exceeding $200 million in value. Prior to his role, he served as technical director at Lockheed Martin Undersea Systems in Manassas, Virginia, in the area of adapted systems and supportability engineering. Dr. Verma has authored over 100 technical papers, book reviews, technical monographs, and co-authored 3 textbooks. He was recognized with an honorary doctorate degree in technology and design from the Linnaeus University in January 2007. With an honorary Master's of Engineering degree from the Stevens Institute in September 2008, Dr. Verma received his PhD and a Master of Science in Industrial and Systems Engineering from Virginia Tech. Now let's welcome Dr. Verma.
Good afternoon. It's a real honor to be here. Something to share with you. Tom requested that I not put my remarks together or my slides until after I had heard General Heitkamp's talk. So while the General was talking, I was putting my slides together, and my briefing is basically around his themes. I think, General, you said it's no longer good enough for us to be old new, we got to be new new. I got that. You also said engineers need to not only be left brain, but also right brain. So while we have to be strong in analytical skills, I think you said we've got to be more creative. So that's another theme. I got that. And then, of course, you said we've got to think about how we adapt to a different culture, or else we become irrelevant. I got that too. So I'm going to cover those 3 themes. I also think that when you think about culture, it's one of those things that most of us as engineers have a tough time dealing with. We're so used to dealing with physics, deterministic behavior. The moment we talk about culture, certainly from my point of view, I try to grab at something, and all I see is fog. What is this thing called culture? The other interesting thing is, culture is often the toughest to change within an organization with a very proud heritage. So in that sense, it's a blessing and a bit of a liability. Because we have so much to be proud of for what we've done, it's harder to think about, gosh, we've got to change the way we do certain things. Of course, before the good general spoke, Dr. Honey talked about how there's over 100,000 engineers that work within the DoD. And so each one of us, and include myself in this, we probably work on a particular type of system or class of systems. It sometimes helps, I think, for us to step back and think about the diversity of systems that the DoD has to contend with. So if we move to the next slide, think about this. You have systems that take us over a decade to design, develop, but then they stay in our inventory for 30, 40, 50 years. There's systems today that we've been operating for over 50 years, and they'll be with us for a few more decades yet. And at the same time, when you look at the diversity of systems, there are certain systems that have to change in the course of seconds. General Heitkamp talked about leveraging artificial intelligence, machine learning. Increasingly, those kinds of systems have behaviors that evolve every second of every minute. And so when you think about this class of systems, it is pretty awesome that if you're an engineer within the DoD, you get to work on this diversity of systems. And this diversity is necessary when we have a threat environment that is full of uncertainty and an adversary that is evolving very quickly. And one of the things that excites me the most is, while we often talk about these critical technology domains, that's exciting. How do we leverage evolutions in, let's say, quantum science, or autonomy, or AI, hypersonics? One of the interesting things right now is the renaissance in engineering with regard to us evolving our toolkit. And that's what I'm going to talk about. Now, in order to give you a bit of a context, I thought, well, let me talk about how perhaps stuff has happened in the past few decades that has led to us realizing success with the kinds of systems that you see on the screen here. So if you go to the next slide, I thought I'd give you a sense for the classical perspective. So let's go to the next slide again, previous slide. This is, I think most of you might recognize this mental model. We think about, gosh, do we have a validated need? Do we have an opportunity we can exploit? Is there a new technology developed that we can perhaps leverage to gain an advantage over the adversary? And then, of course, we think about, gosh, can we model it functionally? Do we understand what the performance attributes of the system are? And once we figure all that out, we have to think about security. Gosh, how do we model security? How do we model safety? How do we model reliability to make sure the systems are up and running when we need them? And so you think about this thread of reasoning that most of us as engineers go through. And of course, for each of these areas, you have a different, I'll call an engineering tribe that deals with it. There's an engineering tribe that looks at safety. There's an engineering tribe that looks at security. There's an engineering tribe that's looking at performance or functional modeling. Now, just so you understand, this is a simplified view of the world. If I just take the performance modeling part, and you go to the next slide, if you can look at, let's say, an armament system, you're looking at interior ballistics, exterior ballistics, blast dynamics, thermal analysis. You can start to think about, it's not just performance, it's so many different attributes of a complex system you gotta contend with. And again, you have a different tribe that does each of these things. And it's the role of that engineer who can lead teams, that engineer who can actually talk and communicate, that has to pull these tribes together. Now, one of the things that we have done in the past is we've depended upon these engineering and technology leaders to be the glue, the human glue, across these tribes. And when one tribe does stuff that messes up some other tribe's work, you need somebody that can speak those the two languages in order to connect the dots, sync up the design so we don't screw it up, where one tribe is doing one thing. We're trying to get everybody pulling in the same direction. Now, I can go one step further, and you now look at, in the class of systems we're talking about, this is not a terribly complex system, but it does go into this complex system space. Think about a UAV. And again, if you look at this, you once again have these tribes that are working together so that at the end we do get a UAV that does what it is supposed to do from a warfighter point of view, executes this mission. But once again, you have a set of engineering tribes. Now, you might think this is complex, but then if you go to the next slide, you see it's not just that it's a bunch of guys or gals who can sit around a coffee table. Often these engineering teams are in the thousands. And not only are they in the thousands, they're not just working within the DoD, they're working with the prime contractors who are working with the DoD. The primes have subcontractors and a complex supply chain. Imagine how hard it is to get everybody pulling in the same direction when you have 3, 4, 5,000 people across these various engineering tribes. And like the good general said, it's not good enough for you just to be able to talk to engineers. You've got to talk to all the other people, the people who are thinking about procurement, acquisition, pricing, and so on and so forth. And so when you think about this, it is pretty awesome, the kind of complexity we have to contend with. And one has to ask, at what level of complexity do our tools not work anymore? At what level of complexity do we have to think about rethinking the way we do engineering? And that, to me, is one of the most exciting things about being an engineer today, right? So if you go to the next slide, I wanted to give you a sense for this. Imagine you're dealing with a scenario on a UAV that requires you to refuel it. And as you are trying to refuel this UAV in flight, you might have to contend with design. Think about all the attributes of a valve. Now, one might argue a valve is part of the plumbing on a UAV. It's the sort of stuff that mechanical engineers deal with. It's in the mechanical domain. But then you do have to communicate, send signals to this valve in order to open it, shut it. So you might argue, well, it's also in the electrical domain. So the electrical engineers are screwing around with the design of this valve. Now, of course, it's the pilot that has to instigate that signal. So one might argue it's in the human factors domain. It might have aspects of communication, and then, of course, safety and fire control. And so it's a simple valve, and you can imagine now all the different engineering tribes that have to contend with aspects of this design. Now, this is a simple example. Scale it, add AI to it, artificial intelligence, machine learning, add aspects of autonomy, add evolving behavior in the system, and all of a sudden you realize, gosh, this gets complex in a hurry. If you go to the next slide, one of the ways in which we have dealt with this is something we take for granted as engineers. We have come up with these governance mechanisms that cause us to sync up across these different engineering tribes and beyond, the program managers, the financial managers, et cetera, et cetera. We have things, if you go back one slide, if possible, we have things like, technical reviews. We have come up with concepts like technical baselines. We have change control boards. We have essentially come up with, in my mind, it's really creative what we've done over the course of the past 50, 60 years. How do we keep these large teams synced up? In the course of human history, you realize those societies that have dealt with complex systems the best have been the most advanced societies on planet Earth. These are concepts we came up with, and now you have to say, well, gosh, as we continue to work with more and more complex systems, is it going to work? And so there is this aspirational thought that the DoD is leading, and it was not too long ago, in fact, in 2018, that the DoD came out with what is today an influential piece of document called the Digital Engineering Strategy. So if you go to the next slide, you can now think what the motivation is. What is the motivation of digital engineering? Because of the complexity of these systems increasing in an exponential manner, there is a need for our engineers to become more and more specialized. Our engineers have become more and more specialized. They're really good at narrower things and they can go deeper. The negative of that is when you're trying to contend with all this technical complexity, there is a danger you might lose sight of the big picture. I'm dealing with the details of design of a valve. Do I understand the influence and the impact it'll have on the behavior of the overall UAV, which is what really matters to the warfighter? How do we manage that detailed complexity and yet not lose sight of the big picture and what matters in theater? So in that regard, if you go to the next slide, this is an aspirational picture. Instead of us thinking about this as a pseudo-sequential set of activities, can we think about a mechanism whereby these activities can happen concurrently? So if I'm working security aspects on a complex system and I make certain changes or recommendations, or I see certain vulnerabilities in my design and I suggest certain changes, are those changes immediately apparent to somebody else who's doing the reliability analysis or somebody else who's looking at the system from a behavior point of view? Can we shortchange that so that the actions of one engineering group become apparent to the other engineering groups if those actions impact them? Can we do it so that we don't have to wait 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year for the next design review where that becomes apparent? And now imagine all the work we've done that we have to redo. Can we make engineering more efficient by causing this collaboration across these engineering tribes? That's one of the objectives of this new engineering toolkit. If you go to the next slide. Go to the next slide. Okay, so what I want to spend the next few minutes on is an area where the DoD has taken a leadership role in articulating what the DoD strategy is with regard to this thing called digital engineering. In my mind, this is probably the most exciting thing that most of us who are in the DoD space and trying to support the way the DoD workforce deals with engineering is trying to contend with. Okay, so generally speaking, if you look at this cartoon, and if you look at the upper part of this cartoon, essentially, really good engineers who have the ability to communicate, who have the ability to lead, have been the human glue across these engineering tribes. And of course, that has worked well, but increasingly it's becoming more and more inefficient. Are we able to supplement that human glue with a data layer, an array of models, where as one engineering group is working on a model, its changes are made apparent to the other models in this chain, and ultimately at the very end, it's not that we have to intimidate everybody with this humongous array of models and data. It's not relevant to a lot of the roles that many of us play. What is the relevant bit of information I need? What is that design artifact I need to look at? It might take the form of a PowerPoint slide. Because if you're used to it, that's okay. But if that is the design artifact that is in front of a leader, because most of us in engineering have to do the analysis, have to come up with the alternatives to allow better decisions to be made. And if all that information is now presented to a leader who has to make a decision, it can happen that in a design review, you're asked, tell me a little more about that decision. And what this environment does is it allows you to trace that thread of reasoning to the analysis that caused you to think about a particular design alternative or a design choice being the preferred choice, and you have the ability to move up and down this food chain, all the way from component level analysis to looking at how that behavior at the component level might impact behavior at the system level, and so on and so forth. That to me is rather exciting. I wouldn't want to suggest that we have everything done, but that's the path we're on towards us being able to cause that being the new toolkit for how we think about engineering these increasingly complex systems. If you go to the next slide, and the next slide. So imagine an environment where you have an array of models, you're looking at a system model, and depending on what your role is, you might have a human factors role, you might have a pilot operator role, you might have a safety role. You can look at your perspective, given what your role is, as to what the state of your system design is in this thing called the system model. And everything is consistent because you've captured it through this federated set of data and models, but you don't have to contend with all of that detail. You can just look at that aspect of the overall system model that matters to you for the decisions you need to make given your role as part of a large engineering team. If you go to the next slide. I thought I'd just do a little bit of a deep dive on a couple of areas that are exciting, that are causing us, in my mind, are the enabling technologies that are causing us to think this is in the art of the possible. If you go to the next slide. One of the areas where the engineering community has made a ton of progress is in the area of what we call descriptive models. Descriptive models, if you go to the next slide, are essentially equivalent to, will require the culture change that General Heitkamp alluded to, not unlike the culture change that the engineering community went through for Mylar drawings to computer-aided designs. It's rather similar for us to go from PowerPoint and Visio to, if you go to the next slide, looking at formal graphical languages that capture or have formal ways in order to replicate syntax, semantics, so that we can capture structure, behavior of a system, interfaces, the way it interacts with its reference universe, the way you capture requirements. You're able to capture all that, and you're able to look at behavior and connect it to the physics-based models, parametric models. And so in our mind, the evolution that has happened in the recent past in us coming up with better and better descriptive models is a huge enabler for the engineering community. If you go to the next slide, the other area that I want to highlight is this notion of ontologies and semantic technologies. So a simple way for me to describe this would be, I might have a bunch of engineers who are doing the reliability analysis of a system may have their tribal language. There's a bunch of engineers who are doing thermal analysis of a system. They have their tribal language. How do we make sure that the two can communicate with each other? Are there ways in which we can replicate their universe, their language, their nouns, their verbs, in such a way that I can understand when they say or do something that impacts me? That's essentially the power of semantic web technologies, right? And there is a ton of progress that is being made in this space, and I think it's going to be exciting in the manner in which we are going to be able to leverage it in the coming months and years. Go to the next slide. Essentially, imagine if we had an underlying data layer and an array of models. If we do it the right way, anytime two models talk to each other and there is a discrepancy, they're going to highlight it. If there is an inconsistency, they will highlight it. If you have a set of rules that you have decided all engineers must abide by, if an engineer tries to do something that violates one of those rules, the model will tell the engineer, you really want to rethink this. And so think of it in some ways as having a cognitive assistant that is working with you as you're going through, where the models will have these built-in checkers. And ultimately, you can imagine in the end analysis, as you create these libraries of models, it allows us to rethink the way we talk about knowledge management. We will never win the battle with quantity. We have to win the battle with creativity and competence. And so when you start to think in terms of these arrays of models, as we start building these models, it really becomes a superb knowledge management tool, because we now start to create these libraries of models where, much like the software engineers do without even thinking about it, you have these libraries of models for general engineering writ large, where every time I have to build a new system, I have a starter kit. I can begin with a set of design patterns. I can begin with some reference architectures that I don't have to begin with a clean sheet of paper. So there is a ton of possibilities when we start to think about leveraging digital engineering for complex systems in the future. Go to the next slide. I wanted to just reflect a bit on the class of systems that we have to contend with today. I think if you look at 60, 70, 80 years ago, almost all systems were largely mechanical electrical systems. And then, of course, you started to have this new thing called software, and you started to have these bits of software here and there. And now you hardly can talk about any interesting system today that doesn't have a ton of software. In fact, increasing amounts of functionality in systems today is implemented by software. And so when you start to think about software-intensive systems, you hear about, without getting into the buzzwords, you hear about us getting challenged to make our systems more network-enabled. And of course, it's not just our systems, it's the doctrine, the people around those systems, and so you're really talking about a broad enterprise. And if you look at the toolkit we have, the toolkit that we're using was really architected and built in the 40s and 50s and 60s. It was meant for systems that were electromechanical systems. We stretched them when we started to think about systems that had bits of software, but as we get more and more software intensive, it's really, functionality is really driven by software, you have to say, well, isn't it time for us to rethink the toolkit we have as engineers? And for me, that's what we're in the middle of. So when we talk about DevSecOps and DevOps and agile development and digital engineering and modular open systems architectures, those are different aspects of what I'm saying is this new way of us thinking about engineering of the future. Right? That to me is one of the most exciting things about being an engineer within the DoD ecosystem. If you go to the next slide, I wanted to foot stomp what General Heitkamp said about us having to think creatively, us thinking about changing our culture. Imagine an environment where when we're talking about alternative designs and we're making decisions about alternative designs, we have models of these designs that we can simulate in a multi-domain battle space environment. And we can see what their behavior is in a near realistic environment, and that drives our decision as to what the best choice is from a design point of view. Imagine if we have that virtual model of a system, it lives with its physical twin. And so when we talk about this notion of a digital twin, you have a digital twin that stays and captures the evolution of the physical entity to where we can actually apply it for material readiness, logistics, we can do prognostics, think about upgrades before it becomes an emergency, and so on and so forth. The possibilities are endless. Imagine now you have all these models and you have these scenarios, you can think about creative con-ops in a virtual environment. The possibilities are endless when you think about this. And in the recent past, I read an essay that was written by an individual who was a test pilot on the F-35 program. He wrote a wonderful essay, a 2-page, 3-page essay, and he ended. So my next slide is, I've plagiarized his thought. This pilot said, all my career, imagination has been ahead of technology. We could imagine what we wish we could do, but technology wouldn't let us. And he says, as I end my career, I'm realizing technology is ahead of imagination. There is so much we can do if we would just get creative. There is so much we could do if we could contend with the tyranny of legacy. This is what we've always done. This is how we've always done it. If we can get past that, it would be so awesome. So when you think of all this and you look at the diversity of systems that exist within the DoD, my last slide is my way of saying, if you go to the previous one, there couldn't be a better time to be an engineer within the DoD. And much like the General said, it's a real pleasure and an honor to be with you as part of Engineers Week in 2023. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Verma. Now we're going to open it up for any questions our audience members may have for the speakers. If you have a question, please raise your hand and a microphone will be brought to you. So Major General and Dr. Bernesh, can you come up here?
Go ahead, Chair.
Testing.
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Julia Morgan. I had a quick question about really dealing with the legacy of the old way we do systems, which you mentioned earlier in your speech was extremely efficient with tech reviews and configuration control boards. However, as we move into the digital age, where we have 3D models and we want to make changes and decisions quickly, we still need to maintain some of the established policies of how do we have configuration control and don't lose the thread and the structure. Have you been thinking about it? Have you addressed it in any way?
Can you hear me? You're correct. I think one of the things we have to do is separate the how from the why. So the how is a tech review. We might ask, why do we do it? The how is a baseline review. We might ask, why do we do it? And then if we get to the why, then we say, is there another way for us to do this? And so if And a tech review has multiple objectives, as you know, right? So you have so many things that happen as part of, and in fact, the cadence is now built into the way we do award fees for contractors and all of that. So you're correct that we've gotten so used to that cadence, we have to, most of us who are working this are only looking at this cadence from an engineering viewpoint. A tech review is meant to expose inconsistencies across multiple analyses. But now, if I say, well, those kinds of engineering processes I can manage in a digital engineering environment, we're thinking about all that. But what most of us are not yet thinking about are what are the business processes that are tied to a tech review that we need to think about. Am I making sense?
You are. I agree with you that you might flip it around and not ask why do we need a tech review, but how can we do it in a new way?
Yes.
I do think we need the tech reviews for multiple reasons, not just the engineering, but also it's a nice snap line for are you meeting the requirements?
That's right.
And the same thing with configuration control. It's the same when you do an ECP. You're evaluating how does this impact the total system, not just the one component.
No, you're correct. Yes.
The how do we get about doing it with 3D models versus a two-dimensional TDP, that kind of thing. I just think that that's a gap that I think engineers face all the time within the programs of we're requesting two-dimensional TDPs, but really they're working in the three-dimensional world.
That's correct. Yeah. And I also think that we don't need to have a 2-day event where it's death by PowerPoint, you know, when you go through a design review, but you can do that in a more continuous way. And when there are those issues that come up across the seams, whether it's system seams or technology seams or tech domain seams, you can resolve those earlier rather than wait for a sync-up event, you know, that might happen. I would say that we have been thinking about that. We have approaches to it, but I would be lying if I say we have completely figured out a way to replicate that, right? So, thank you.
Did you want to say anything?
Well, I would just relate it to your comment about, you know, how where technology is beyond our imagination right now. It kind of gets to some of the analysis you're talking about. If I could convince an engineering student right now to take one more class, I think it would be artificial intelligence and machine learning, because we're going to use those tools. If you can start imagining how we can use those tools to better do our business, that's where we could really harness that energy. And I think causing people to think differently is a really difficult task, and it gets to exactly what you're asking about.
Thank you. Any more questions? Yes.
Hi, good afternoon. This is Kristen Baldwin from the Air Force. I had a question that maybe builds on your last comment about being an engineering student. My question is, just reflecting on the changes in the engineering profession and really what it takes to be a successful engineer, can you comment on the change of how we're developing future engineering, students? How is the curriculum needing to change, or what types of engagements should we be having in this curriculum development to create future engineers?
Thank you, Kristen. I appreciate that. Anecdotally, about every university has, in engineering, every university has design projects that students do in the final year. And every university will often have an engineering design day when these kids get to show off what they've done. And it's pretty cool to walk around and see what these students have done over the course of the past 8-9 months. I remember going through the auditorium, and I made a mental note. I'll visit all those design projects that were done by students in mechanical engineering. And so I just did an informal survey. I went to every mechanical engineering design team project, and I would ask them the same question. If you could redo your engineering, what 2 or 3 courses would you wish you had that you didn't have? And I thought I'd ask the same question to every team to see what reaction I would get. And it was bizarre about the consistency of the response. All the mechanical engineering students I talked to said, boy, I never really knew how important software was. If I could redo it, I'd request a couple of extra courses in software engineering. And that's where it becomes religious wars in academia, where you have only so many credits, and faculty members are so passionate that you must have this course or that course. And I would say to you that universities are realizing that. There is a need for us to bring this new reality into, I think, Kristen, you were the one who said once, software engineering is the new liberal arts for all engineers. Without being good at software, you're suboptimal as an engineer. I would say that's one thing. The other is, until probably 10, 15 years ago, all the mechanical engineering students who worked on a senior design project had only mechanical engineering students as their team members. Increasingly, universities are coming up with multidisciplinary design projects where electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, computer scientists have to work with each other. And that's closer to what the real world is like. And so I think you can see changes like that happening, which I think will be really, really good. So go ahead, General.
Oh, wow, that's hard to beat. Mine is not nearly as eloquent because it's really aspirational. I wish we could make our engineering education a journey instead of this destination. So I went to school for 7 years on my undergraduate. My old man kept saying, hey, are we going to call you doctor after this, right? Because I hope that you're getting something more than a bachelor's degree. You know, the same dean of engineering that I talked about, he said, guess what? We're taking a sabbatical next semester. I said, sir? He said, yep, we're going to go work in the governor's office. He needs people to focus on how we can bring technology into the state government. And it was a fantastic learning experience. But it's so difficult for students to do that. And we military engineers, we don't get those kinds of programs where we can bring somebody on in an internship or fund a graduate degree or fund specialized training so that, you know, you're exactly right. You just can't be an expert in your little narrow field. You have to understand all the different parts of it, but we get so specialized that that we kind of lose sight of that. So I don't have a good answer, but I wish I had all the money in the world and I could finance all these great military engineers to make it more of a journey rather than get your 4 years degree and immediately go to work.
Thank you. Any more questions? Okay, well, thank you, Major General Heitkamp and Dr. Verma, for answering those questions and providing clarity for the audience members. If you have any other questions you'd like to ask, can you stay up on stage, please? Sorry. Yeah, no. If you have any other questions you'd still like to ask, please email whs.engineersweek@mail.mil, and we will post the answers on our Engineers Week website. Thank you again, our featured speakers, Major General Richard Heitkamp and Dr. Dinesh Verma, for sharing their perspectives on how engineers make a difference across the DoD and around the world as they lead the charge to create the future. In recognition of Major General Heitkamp and Dr. Verma, the Facilities Services Directorate and the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Research and Engineering are rewarding them with a plaque as a token of our appreciation for their dedication to the field of engineering and their support of our national defense. Thank you again.
Thanks, Tom. I appreciate it.
Good to meet you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah.
Thanks. Okay to go now?
Yeah, yeah. As a final reminder, participants are encouraged to email questions for our speakers to whs.engineersweek@mail.mil. I think I've said that about 100 times. The questions and their responses will be documented on the Engineers Week website. The URL for this website is provided in the event program and on the screen here. It will be, there it is. We would like to thank everyone for taking time to celebrate Engineers Week with us today. We thank you for all your hard work and support of the DoD mission and the engineering profession, and hope each of you will continue to celebrate engineering every day in all that you do. And I'd like to thank the American Sign Languaging Program for their American Sign Language interpreting today. So thank you, everybody. Have a great day.